our current president does not have his faculties and cannot, I think, carry out the powers and duties of the office. That is why the 25th Amendment exists.
And we begin this week, as we always do, with a clip from This Week on the Hill, Salem News Channel. This time it was Chip Roy saying out loud what all of us are thinking and what highly placed members of Congress and the president's cabinet should be saying. Chip Roy.
First, let me just state facts and make some certain things clear. First, I think all of us who love America and want to restore freedom want President Trump to win this fall. I think all of us take no great joy in recognizing what is very clear for everybody, unfortunately, in the entire world now, is that our current president does not have his faculties and cannot, I think, carry out the powers and duties of the office. That is why the 25th Amendment exists. I believe it is incumbent upon us to recognize that and to pursue protection of our own country with 200 days at a minimum remaining in President Biden's administration. He carries the nuclear codes. He makes decisions about our safety and security. He is the commander in chief. He is the one negotiating with countries. He's engaging in Ukraine and talking to, and with Russia and China and the Middle East and Iran and Israel. He's making terrible decisions about Israel right now. He is very clearly diminished. And Tony, this is the important part. Anyone with eyes saw what we saw. The president is not there. I can't take no great joy in it. So I introduced a resolution. By the way, Congress can't do anything, okay? All Congress can do is introduce a resolution and simply stating that fact. The vice president has to act. Vice President Harris would have to call the cabinet together, have a majority of cabinet join her in asserting the 25th Amendment, that the president can't carry out the powers and the duties of the office. All I did was introduce a resolution saying that that is what should occur. Some people understandably are concerned that that might interfere with what is clearly now a bolstering strength for President Trump versus a very weakened President Biden. I understand that. But let's understand this. I think President Trump would be equally or even stronger against the non-incumbent, in truth, Kamala Harris, even if she were to be put in place. And more importantly, we have a constitutional duty to make sure that we don't have a president who is undermining our national security while he has no faculties there.
Akash, if the 25th Amendment doesn't apply to what we're seeing play out right now, what does it apply to? Have we seen enough here to trigger such a drastic move?
Yeah, I mean, people are obviously right to question President Biden's capacity or lack thereof. Ultimately, what Congressman Roy was saying is that this decision has to be made within the administration, cabinet officials, the vice president. And so I think for us to sit here and say they should or shouldn't do that, I don't think is terribly useful. I think there are real questions at stake. And I think the American people ultimately are going to be the ones who decide the direction of this country. Now, whether it's President Biden or it's somebody else on the ballot for the Democrats this fall, I think is very much an open question at this point. But what Chip Roy alluded to is the fact that no matter who is in the Oval Office, the decisions coming out of this administration have been an abject failure across the board with foreign policy, domestic policy, economic policy. And I think the American people are ultimately going to be the arbiters of the change of direction that this country badly needs in November.
Yeah, Julie, that absolutely, this November's election has gotten even much more important since the debate last week. But can we get there with this commander in chief? Can we get there with this CEO?
I honestly, I'm so glad that Chip Roy is out there and being honest about this. I am really afraid. I'm not just afraid for another Biden administration and the policies that are going to come out of a lame duck president at that point. I'm really afraid for the next several months. I mean, China is watching. Our enemies are watching. Russia is watching. This is a scary time. And the idea that everybody's talking about whether he should run, everybody's sort of, and I know the legacy media has sort of woken up to the fact that he has mashed potatoes for brains. Suddenly they're like, wow, we had no idea. And they're talking about whether he should be the nominee. I'm like, wait a minute, we're bearing the lead here. This is terrifying that this man is the sitting president, which of course really, if you're paying attention, you realize he hasn't been the president for a while. I don't know if it's Obama in his third term. I don't know if it's Jill Biden. I don't know if it's Susan Rice and this sort of cabal of old Obama officials that are working to run the government. But this is a crisis, and Congress should act. I'm thrilled that Chip Roy is raising this, and honestly, I'm really shocked that not many more people are talking about it.
And Gabe, he made the point. It's just a resolution. They can't actually trigger the 25th Amendment, but there is discussion. Are Democrats starting to sort of recognize this too, either for realistic, actual national security reasons or just for pure political reasons because they're afraid they're going to lose in November?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I mean, that Chip Roy would be calling on Biden to be impeached is completely unsurprising, right? Republicans for years now have been raising concerns over Biden's mental faculties and whatnot. But there are House Democrats who are reportedly circulating letters that would be going around. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition. There's several Democrats right now, actually any lawmakers who are talking right now to the media, it's all on background because presumably they're trying to feel the temperature around to see if it's either advantageous or they're able to they're going to feel comfortable speaking, publicly about the president. So.
Yeah, let's go back to Akash because you raised the question of Vice President Harris and the members of the cabinet who would have to make a 25th Amendment move if it were to be made. Let's not forget that the first person to speak the quiet part out loud was Special Counsel Robert Hur at the beginning of the year when he found that President Biden quite possibly did mishandle in a criminal way classified documents, but said that it would be fruitless to bring him to trial because of his mental capacities and his memory. At that time, here's what Kamala Harris had to say.
I want to get to the heart of what I think you're raising, which you've said is his age. So let's talk about that. I spend a lot of time with Joe Biden, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. And I can tell you, this is someone who is tireless in terms of working on behalf of the American people. To your point of knowing Joe Biden, he comes from a background and a place in his heart and soul where he cares so deeply about working people, about families.
Akash, unless one is to believe that this recent event at the debate last week was some kind of immediate episode and it's just, happened, one must think that the progressive nature of his condition was well in an advanced state when Kamala Harris made those remarks. In other words, she's been part of what can only be described as a cover-up here if we're actually moving in a 25th Amendment direction.
No, that's obviously true, right? And it's not just her and others in the administration, his spokespeople, members of Congress. Of course, the mainstream media for months and months and months was gaslighting all of us until it was put on full display for the entire country to see last week. And honestly, I think this is as much of an indictment of President Biden. It's an indictment of everyone else around him who has covered up for this when it has really grave national security implications that Chip Roy talked about. And I think that can't be lost on people, that there are real potential consequences to this. And not only, obviously, is there a question about President Biden's ability to do the job and run for president and do it for another 4 years potentially, but I think it also raises some really serious questions and need for accountability of the people around him and the people who covered this administration and the mainstream media who covered up for this for months.
I agree. This is one of the greatest cover-ups in American political history, and it's devastating in terms of the ramifications here, especially considering during this window we've had men and women in harm's way from our military under his command. Gabe, the cover-up also involves some of your colleagues in the media. Are you amused by the last week where they all recognize, oh my gosh, who knew the sky was blue?
I was actually just talking about this with someone else before this call, another reporter. I don't think that they just realized or recognized that Biden is in the state that he's in. I think it just finally, Greg Gutfeld actually had a fantastic tweet about this where he said something along the lines of the media isn't reporting about Biden's issues because they saw what's going on, or the White House saw what's going on. It's because millions of Americans turned on that debate and saw a president who was struggling significantly to string together a few words.
It's not because they suddenly saw it. It's because we obviously saw it. You can't lie and cover up something that is so blatant now. It's impossible.
Yeah, correct. And the real question we should be asking everyone on this panel, right, is why is the media only doing it now? Is it because Biden, that debate was a massive hit to him in the polls? Is it because it exposed significant weaknesses about the president? Why is every single legacy media outlet virtually calling on the president? I mean, the New York Times editorial board called on President Joe Biden to step down. Axios is publishing a lot of really good reporting, specifically Alex Thompson right now, about Biden's issues, and the White House, White House staffers speaking out. Were these White House staffers, did they not have these same opinions months ago? Or is it that the journalists were not asking these questions and were unwilling to challenge the administration, and now they're able to do it because everyone is in the same boat, that it's politically advantageous and safe?
That is a great question, and I, as host of this program, will steal it and apply it to Julie. Why do you think, Julie? Why do you think suddenly the media is acting like, well, reporters?
Well, this is a classic case of don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. They know that, look, trust in the media. We can look at the polling. Trust in the media is at an all-time historic low. Nobody trusts these guys. They know they're being lied to. And so now they're having to sort of shift. And we're seeing, as Gabe mentioned, he mentioned Axios and Alex Thompson. He went on the news this weekend and he was saying how this could be a real problem for Kamala Harris because she's a part of this sort of cabal of people who are lying to the American people. And he said she has been one of the main public validators of Biden's health. I think this is really going to be a problem for her if she does end up being the nominee. I think she's going to really face some tough questions.
I think you're right. And I'll sum it up with this. I'll answer my question. I think that the reason they're now coming out is because Joe Biden's candidacy in 2020 and his presidency has served, only one purpose, and that's to stop Donald Trump. And it's not just good enough that you keep him from winning re-election in 2020, but he also had to use his presidency to destroy Donald Trump, to convict him, to put him behind bars, and to end his political career. He failed at that. And after the debate, it looked as though he would actually serve to allow Donald Trump to win election this year. As soon as he no longer served that purpose, he has to go. And so the media, they're saluting smartly and charging up that hill. And I can only say the next few weeks is going to be pretty amazing and historic to witness.